diving into the cognitive services announced at Microsoft Build, and some takeaways from PyCon. I'm Tanya Hall for ZDNet, and joining me is Paige Bailey. She's a senior cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, specializing in machine learning and artificial intelligence. Welcome, Paige.
Hi, Tanya. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thanks for taking time out of a very busy week of events with Microsoft Build and PyCon. So you were actually a presenter at Microsoft Build. I want to get into that, but before I do, what does a senior cloud developer advocate specializing in machine learning and artificial intelligence do at Microsoft?
I know it's a lot of words, and I get that a lot. So our role as a cloud developer advocate is to make the experience for working on Azure for whatever community we're focused on as delightful as possible. So I specialize in machine learning and AI. That means that I make sure that our deep learning virtual machines, our data science virtual machines, our developer tooling and developer-facing APIs, and all of the open source machine learning and deep learning frameworks come along nicely on Azure for all of the folks that we have using them. So that entails a variety of things. So I get to speak at a lot of conferences. I get to create a lot of really cool things using Microsoft products and other open source frameworks. And I get to take feedback about what's not working the way that it should be to the product teams and make sure that they incorporate that feedback. So if there are any difficulties or anything that isn't quite as friendly as it could be for you as a machine learning engineer or data scientist on Azure, let me know, and we'll see what we can do about getting it fixed.
As I mentioned before, you presented at Microsoft Build and on the cognitive services. So what were the cognitive services announced at Build?
Absolutely. So cognitive services are a collection of tools that were created by Microsoft. They're friendly developer-facing APIs for deep learning algorithms. And that means that if you want to do something like emotion detection or face detection or object detection or speech-to-text transcription, you don't have to build a model and train it. All you have to do is write 10 lines of code in whatever language you like to call the API, and it automatically does it on your data. So the cognitive service that was announced at Build that I was fortunate enough to talk about was something called Azure Cognitive Search. And what it does is it applies pretty much every single cognitive service that we have in our suite of tooling to the data that you already have on Azure, which means that all of your videos, all of your PDFs, all of your audio files, all of the database information that you have, engrams, so keywords, are extracted from each of those files. Video files are automatically transcribed and described. Images embedded within PDF documents are automatically described, and engrams are extracted from those descriptions. And then a knowledge graph is built. So for example, if you had, the example that we gave during Build was if the NBA had a collection of images of LeBron James and he just happened to be wearing Nike shoes while he was in those images, you would have a sort of a graph display, and LeBron James would be a node and Nike would be a node, and they would be connected in some way. So even though Nike and LeBron James as text words are never associated with those images, you would still have that information extracted and ready for you to use. It's really, really cool.
Who has access? That's a lot of data. When you talk about describing images and transcribing videos and extracting from text, there's a lot of content. Who has access to that?
Gotcha. So if you're using the APIs, anybody who has data on Azure would be able to leverage those APIs for their own data. What was used to train those models is all of the data that Microsoft has at its disposal. So if you imagine every single image that was indexed by Bing, so if you go and do an image search online and you look up, cute panda, and then all of a sudden lots of cute pandas show up, that would be an example of some of the data that was used to train the object detection and the vision APIs. So that's another reason why cognitive services are so powerful, because most companies, and me personally, I don't have at my disposal millions of tagged images that I can use for my deep learning projects, but Microsoft does. And since they spent, the weeks to train the model and paid for all of the substantial hardware, and they have the classified images, millions of them, I'm able to leverage those models that have been built by Microsoft for my own personal projects.
So we talk about images, and there are certainly plenty of them, and we all see things differently, whether is it a blue dress or a gold dress, whatever the debate is for the week. We see things differently, right? So to what degree of certainty can you infer emotion from a photograph?
Gotcha. That's a wonderful question. And it really does depend on kind of the validity of the input data that you're using to feed the algorithm. So usually whenever you get a response back from one of these APIs or from one of your own machine learning algorithms, you get back a classification. So it might say, happy, and then you'll get back a confidence level. And that's usually like 0.75 or 0.85 or something of that nature. And that would be a percentage confidence in how accurate that classifier is. So if you're getting back, if you send in a picture to the API and you get back a response that has some sort of emotion and then that confidence level, that is kind of the confidence that you can have associated with that classification. However, again, that's only as good as the data that was used to train the model initially. So if you had a collection of photographs that weren't necessarily quite as happy as they could have been, used as the happy classifiers, then your algorithm wouldn't be accurately classifying happy to the extent that it could, if that makes sense.
Yes. So your CEO, Satya Nadella, mentioned or referenced some things that I thought were really powerful at the event. And one quote he was, "We need to develop a set of principles that guide the choices we make, because the choices we will make define our future." How has that theme spread across Microsoft?
So I love that quote, and I love that Satya said it. And it really is truly ingrained into every single one of Microsoft's products as we're increasingly adding more AI capabilities, is that we want to make sure that we're doing it responsibly. So his quote about how the choices we make now kind of define our future. We're all about building programs such as AI for accessibility. So making sure that every algorithm created would be able to do some good for humanity, making it so that everybody's kind of on the same footer as much as we can be. Also AI for Earth. So we're doing a lot of climate change research with AI to try to make sure that the research that's done points towards kind of carbon capture, accurate CO2 level readings, and then also ways that we can combat climate change potentially, or at least be more sustainable about our agricultural practices and about obtaining water, those sorts of things. And also, I believe we talked about this a little bit earlier. We've implemented an AI ethics board. So it doesn't. I believe, I can't speak for Microsoft, obviously, but I believe that we as a company are firmly devoted to making sure that whatever's created is created in a way that would not be intentionally harmful towards any specific group of people, or any like not harmful to the environment, not harmful to people, and more about enabling human progress and augmenting creativity, augmenting human capabilities, as opposed to doing something intentionally harmful.
Well, as you pointed out, Satya had some really good intentions and certainly some good quotes. I'm excited to see the future of where he takes it from the announcements at Build. But you also attended another event this week. You participated in PyCon. What should we expect to see coming out of that conference?
Yes, so PyCon is, a lot of us refer to it as our nerd Christmas because it's a Python conference. It happens annually in a different city. So previously it's been held in places like Portland. This week it's been in Cleveland, Ohio. And it's a collection of pretty much everything Python. And Python is a huge user community. So it's everything from web development to game development to data science, machine learning, AI. And there was a smattering of every single one of those groups at PyCon this year. So our keynotes were really cool. Microsoft had a huge presence. Brett Cannon, one of my coworkers, gave a keynote, and one of my CDA colleagues, Nina, she gave a talk about kind of using Python to solve everyday problems. And I think the most exciting part about PyCon for me was at the end of the conference, we have 3 days of open source sprints. And what you get to do during this open source sprinting period is you and a team of people, or you by yourself, can just go in and contribute code or contribute documentation to any open source project that you like. So I've been sprinting on something called TensorBoard, making sure that the docs are a little bit better. They were kind of non-existent. So hopefully there will at least be an introductory level tutorial for TensorBoard by the end of this week.
Well, and that leads to the next question I had for you, which is what open source package or institution isn't getting as much attention as it should?
Gotcha. So that two things, because I have to say two, but they're both affiliated with TensorFlow. One is called TensorBoard, and it is a way for machine learning and deep learning practitioners to visualize what's happening in their deep neural networks. And this is huge. That's monumental because most of the time, deep learning networks are very kind of black boxy. You don't really know what's going on. But TensorBoard kind of shines a flashlight on it. So you understand how your layers are behaving. It makes it a little bit easier to debug, and you can kind of see what's happening to your data as it goes through the process. So TensorBoard is really cool. And then also something called Kubeflow, which is all about once you've built a neural network or once you've built some sort of machine learning algorithm and you've containerized it, so you've put it in like a Dockerized container and somebody can ping it like a REST API, how do you go about scaling it? So, this instance, this hardware configuration might work if you have 1,000 users. What happens when you get 1,000,000? And Kubeflow does the automatic scaling with Kubernetes, and it can also do retraining of algorithms in an automated fashion with Kubernetes as well. So Kubeflow and TensorBoard. Those are the two that I think should be getting more love.
Those are the two that get your vote. So, one of the other things that Satya said was that we have to go from an AI in a few companies to a place where AI is in every company and every organization. So going forward, how do you see the layperson interacting and accepting machine learning and artificial intelligence in their everyday life?
That's another wonderful question. So democratizing AI is a huge endeavor, and it's one that's already been started. I think that AI is going to just be included into every single aspect of every application that we work with, as software developers, sure, but as also just like regular folks. So if you've got the latest version of PowerPoint, you might have noticed that whenever you input an image into a slide, you suddenly get this little pop-up that's like, it's not like the little clippy thing that used to be in Microsoft products, but it's a little pop-up that says something like, look at some of these design choices. We found that these are very effective in terms of communication, and that's all done with AI. Being able to type an email and have it automatically generate, suggested sentences for you to use if it's very obvious that you're, creating a meeting or you're inviting someone to something. That's all AI too. and it makes it very much easier to create these emails. But it feels very natural. And also, like whenever you're using your phone and you have the suggested text back, that's also AI. But I think AI is just, it's not going to be Terminator style, right? I think it's just going to be embedded within two existing applications and really focusing on augmenting human capabilities, and also streamlining processes that, you know, take a little bit of time now, and are kind of tedious, and trying to remove as much of that tedium as possible. I'm an optimist.
Yes, you are. And it's a very exciting future. And thank you so much for joining us to talk about your takeaways from Build as well as PyCon. If somebody wants to connect with you, Paige, if they want to find out more about the work that you're doing or understand better the cognitive services offered by Microsoft, how can they do that?
They can reach out on Twitter and pretty much everywhere else on the internet. I am Dynamic Web Page, Paige spelled like my name, Paige, and I'm usually very responsive. It feels like I live on the internet almost. So feel free to ping me there, DM, or just tweeting at me.
Don't we all live there anymore, Paige? Thank you. And, you know, if you want to find more of my interviews, you can right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic. Or maybe if you want to connect with me, you can go to my website, which is tanyahall.net. I have links to all my social sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. In fact, if you want to talk with me, please follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tanya Hall Radio. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.